this, baby. Right here, right now. Let's go. It's time! Lucas, what time is it?
It's that time again. It's time for UFC 308 Fight Week, and we got our predictions for you. The entire card this time. So let's get right into it because this is going to be a long video.
We went all out for you guys. So let's start off with the opening fight.
We got Ibo Aslan versus Raphael Seria. We're going to say that's right. Dylan, who do you have for this first fight?
I got Aslan. One thing with this card is that there are so many like up and coming prospects with like great records. Like I don't know if anyone on this card has double digit losses.
That's a good point.
Like Ige or Rob might have the most loss on this card. Like there are so many great records, so it was so tough to pick.
Aslan is 13-1. He's on a 5-fight finish streak, whereas Seria is 11-0 undefeated, but all but one of his wins coming by finish. So he's a super exciting fighter. But ultimately, I went Aslan with this one because he does have a little bit more hype behind him.
Yeah, I think he's gonna hand Seria his first career loss.
Moving up the card, we got Renat Fakhretdinov versus Temba Garimbo. Originally, this fight was slated to have Nursultan Ruziboyev on it, but he pulled out. There is rumors that Garimbo has moved in on this card. It's not super official yet, but he has posted about Abu Dhabi, so we're gonna predict how do you even say this? Fakhretdinov versus Garimbo.
Yeah, I just referred to him as Renat.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
So Renat is undefeated in the UFC, and I do not think that that's going to end at 308. I think he gets it done by decision.
Yeah, Garimbo literally just fought at UFC Fight Night Royval versus Tyra, which was like 2 weeks away from this card. So honestly, I don't see him being able to cut down again and properly have a good camp. He went all 3 rounds with Nico Price. So yeah, I'm gonna have to go with Renat as well. Renat has some good wins as well. He has wins over Nicholas Dalby, Douglas Lima, Kevin Lee, and Brian Battle. So he's been in the game for a while.
He beat Brian Battle. That's my boy.
Yeah,
That's my boy.
He beat Brian Battle, so he's a decent fighter. Next up, we got Ismail Nordio versus Bruno Silva. Bruno Silva, where do I even start? This dude has lost to everyone. He has lost to Chris Weidman, Shara Bullet, Brendan Allen, and Alex Ferrera by decision.
Yeah, somehow this dude fought Pereira.
And took him to a decision.
Something a lot of guys can't do.
But then got beat by Shara Bullet. Like, this guy has the weirdest resume ever.
Dude, Shara Bullet gonna jump up to light heavyweight. Title run starts now.
Sheesh.
Bruno Silva, he's lost 3 straight. And I think it's going to be 4 straight. I have Nordiev getting it done. I think he's actually going to submit him.
Ooh, that's a bold take. I think that Bruno Silva is gonna win.
Really?
I think he's gonna come back. He's also lost to your lookalike, Gerald Mearshart. GM3, baby.
But look at this man, Ismail. You guys can't see, but we can. This dude is scary.
Yeah.
Like this dude, you walk into an alley and you see this guy, you're dead.
Ismail used to fight in the UFC, then he got cut after losing to Sean Brady in 2020, and this is his first fight back in the UFC since then. Honestly, I don't really care about this matchup, but I'm gonna go with Bruno Silva.
Ooh, that's our first difference of the night.
Next up, we got Farid Basharat versus Victor Hugo. Basharat is undefeated at 12-0 with his last win being against Taylor Lapalus, who's actually a really solid win.
And Hugo is 25-4. Dude has 4 losses in such a long career, which is really impressive. And this fight should be very competitive on the ground with both guys having a ton of submission wins. Ultimately, I'm going with Basharat to get it done by decision.
Yeah, Victor Hugo is 25-4, but he only has 1 fight and 1 win in the UFC. So it's tough to say whether his record and his opponents will hold up to the UFC caliber fighters, especially a young Afghani prospect like Basharat. This is one of my more confident picks. I'm confident in Basharat. All right, this is where things start to get exciting. I'm going to try my best to pronounce this name. We got Kennedy Nchukwu.
And silent, it's Jukwuk.
Oh yeah,
Jukwuk.
Nchukwu.
Jukwuk.
So I'm just gonna call him Kennedy. We got Kennedy versus Chris Barnett, the GOAT.
I really wanted to see Justin Toffa come out here and fight, but having Chris Barnett in here, it's not a bad show. Dude is so exciting, so fun, so silly.
It's gonna get the crowd going. Even an Abu Dhabi dead crowd, Chris Barnett will get them going.
Like if this dude starts doing like the split twerk, like those Abu Dhabi guys are gonna be like, hey.
No, he's gonna be banned from Abu Dhabi.
I will say though, Chris Barnett does not have a good track record for his fights actually happening. So if this fight gets canceled, I would not even be surprised.
Yeah, Chris Barnett has been out for a long time since 2022. He's had 4 canceled bouts in between now and then, but finally he should be back in the octagon on Saturday.
Knock on wood.
He's obviously had that pretty famous spinning wheel kick KO, but before that he's had a very up and down career.
Yeah, it's kind of 1 win, 1 loss, 1 win, 1 loss. Not really been able to get a streak going inside of the UFC or in his career at all.
But on the other hand, you have Kennedy, who has 2 losses, which were to Ovince St. Preux, who literally just got cut from the UFC after losing to Ryan Spann, and he also lost to Dustin Jacoby, who just got beaten by 2024 Dominic Reyes. So Nchukwu has some questionable losses, but honestly, I have no faith in Chris Barnett. And I think the odds just came out today, right before we recorded this. Guess what Chris Barnett debuted at as a underdog?
He's the favorite of the underdog.
Underdog. Underdog.
Like plus 200?
Plus 500. Do you have Chris Barnett? Oh no.
Makes my Chris Barnett round 2 KO look a little sus now. Trust the process.
Yeah,
this is my lock of the night. Everyone go tell your parents that you need some money. Go sell their house, go sell their car, put it on. Please don't.
Put it all on Chris Barnett. No, I went with Kennedy.
But how great would it be to see Chris Barnett start twerking in the middle of the Abu Dhabi ring and just have like some like Abu Dhabi sergeants come and like just honestly like kill him.
Fun fact for you, Chris Barnett is one of only 2 heavyweights to miss heavyweight weight. This guy is fat. He is so obese. He has no cardio.
Dude.
Next up the card, we got Abus Magomedov versus Bruno Ferrera. If you know Abus, you probably know him from that Sean Strickland loss. He also went on to lose to Barallo after that, and then got a win over Warley Alves, who he himself has no good wins over. So Abus Magomedov doesn't have the best record. Bruno Ferrera is on a 2-fight win streak over Phil Hawes, who's the chinniest fighter known to man, and Dustin Stoltzfus. Before that, he lost to Nursultan Ruziboyev, who was supposed to be on this card.
That was his only loss, though. So Ferrera is 11-1 currently in his career. He is the more youthful fighter. This fight was honestly one of the tougher ones. It might have been the toughest one on the prelims to predict. I ultimately think that the youth of Ferrera is just going to propel him over Magomedov. I think Magomedov is trending down a little bit, and I think Ferrera is trending up, and I think that Ferrera is going to get it done, but I do think that this fight will be close.
Yeah, I was pretty torn on this fight, but I am going to go with the slight underdog Bruno Ferrera.
Yeah, just seems right.
Next up, we got Said Nurmagomedov versus Daniel Santos. Said is 7-2 inside of the UFC, with his last win coming from first round guillotine over Muin Gufarov. And before that, a loss to Jonathan Martinez, who we know is a pretty good bantamweight. He just fought Jose Aldo.
Said Nurmagomedov. I just said Nurmagomedov. The last name is all you need to hear.
Especially in front of an Abu Dhabi judging.
Oh, 10-8, 10-7, 10-0 round for Nurmagomedov.
Yeah. Oh, he's Nurmagomedov. His control time doubles.
Neither of these fighters have been submitted before, and I think this fight is ultimately going to be on the ground. So that's why, for my prediction, I have Nurmagomedov to get it done, but by decision.
And Daniel Santos is only 2-1 inside of the UFC, so this is a big step up in competition and experience for him. I am pretty confident in Said Nurmagomedov, especially since his last name is in Abu Dhabi. Next up, we got Mateusz Rebecky versus Miktabik Oralbai. This is going to be a banger fight. Oralbai is on an 8-fight win streak, with 2 of those being in the UFC, 6 KO wins and 5 submission wins, so he's pretty well rounded, and he's still super young despite him looking like he's 40.
80.
Yeah, 80. He's 26.
26, looks 62.
Rebecky is 19-2, 3-1 inside the UFC, with his last fight being a loss to Diego Ferreira by TKO.
I think that this fight is really going to be when the trajectory of this card really starts to be like, yeah, it's basically the main card time now. You know, like these last 2 prelims are both going to be bangers. They have name value on it. I think that the top lightweight prospect, Oralbai, is going to come out here and show out and get a highlight KO over Mateusz Rebecky.
Yeah, I believe in the Oralbai hype train. Obviously, I'm famous for buying his merch that hasn't arrived yet.
Full violence. Get it here.
And the last fight on the prelims, we have Jeff Neal, ranked 10, versus Rafael Dos Anjos, ranked number 14. Jeff Neal is on a 2-fight losing streak to Shavkat and Ian Gary, so you can't really discredit him too much, because those are 2 huge prospects or contenders now. And he looked solid in both of those fights, landing big shots on both of them. He actually took Ian Gary to a split decision win.
While Neal tends to be the stepping stone for these up-and-comers of welterweight, I just don't think that Dos Anjos is on the level of Gary or a Shavkat, and I ultimately have Neil getting to show off that KO power, and I think he's going to knock out Dos Santos here.
Rafael Dos Anjos is 39 and he's on a 2-fight losing streak as well. Obviously, he does have 21 wins and 14 losses in the UFC, so he's had a super long career. Ultimately, I don't think he's going to be moving back up the rankings.
Where were we? I kind of interrupted you. Yeah, so Matthias, Rebecky, and Rediled.
That's your reset now?
Rebecky.
Ooh, I've been waiting a long time for this. Shara the fraud bullet. He's taking on Armen Petrosyan. We got generational hate for this guy.
The fence grabber is back in his home in Abu Dhabi.
If you watch Dotson's Corner, you know that we are big Shara haters. That fraud check is coming soon, but I don't think it's coming at UFC 308.
Yeah, Shara, he's 14-0, with most of his wins coming primarily by KO earlier on in his career, but in his last 3 fights, he only has 1 KO with 2 decisions coming out of that. We have to take that into consideration when we're talking about this fight.
Well, it's just a product of the higher level in the UFC, right? He's fought in his regional promotions and up-and-coming promotions, but when you get to the UFC and you face guys, he hasn't even faced good guys yet. He's faced absolute cans on short notice. He fought Antonio Tricoli on like a week notice, who had no cardio, and he could not finish him until the 3rd round.
Yeah, I think ultimately Shara looked really good, really flashy up against these low-level local Russian fighters.
Yeah.
But now that he's facing top 50 fighters in the world, it's like, oh, he's not actually that good against these top 50 guys. Just wait until he's fighting top 20 guys, top 25 guys. But this fight is not going to be as much of a layup for Shara as I think Dana and the UFC would have wanted.
Yeah, Shara has been super active, which I do love about him. This is going to be his 4th fight within 12 months, which is great. He's 14-0, like you mentioned, 11 wins by knockout. But as we've seen these last couple wins, he has been getting more decisions. He fought Bruno Silva in 2023, who's on the card earlier. He won that by decision, then Tricoli on short notice, and then Olajaychuk by decision in August. He's on every Abu Dhabi card, which is great. I'm sure he's getting quite a big following over there, which is, again, it's good for an up-and-coming guy like this to fight over and over again. It's what we saw Hamzat do. He fought 4 times super fast, gained a huge following, but Hamzat is on a different level than Shara Bullet.
Hamzat is night and day better than Shara Bullet. Shara Bullet, he's good on the feet, has so many holes, and has very little to no ground game.
Yeah, his takedown defense is very questionable.
Another thing with Shara is this guy is so small. If you stood this guy up beside Dricus du Plessis, he would tower over him. He'd probably be double the size.
Armen Petrosyan is 9-3. He fought in February this year and lost to Rodolfo Vieira, but he did beat Christian Leroy Duncan by decision, who was undefeated at the time, and Gregory Robocop Rodriguez earlier in his career. He kept those fights mainly on the feet, so I'm assuming that we're going to be seeing a similar thing on Saturday. I think this is mainly going to take place on the feet, but in those fights he did show that he can work in the clinch and he can go for takedowns, so we could see that as well. Christian Leroy Duncan isn't actually too dissimilar to Shara Magomedov. He has a very weird, bouncy, chaotic style with lots of kicks, which is what Shara does, but Shara does not have good takedown defense or man, I'm just not confident.
A lot of skill?
Yeah, I'm just not confident in Shara Magomedov. I am going to pick him as my prediction.
As much as it hurts me, I'm also going to pick Shara. And I know that next week on Saturday, me and Lucas are going to be watching this fight so closely, just critiquing everything that Shara does wrong. Every fence grab, we're going to lose it, take away a point. And we cannot wait to come back next Saturday, either to critique the crap out of Shara Bullet for being a fraud, or jumping around in joy if he loses.
And honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if we saw an upset here.
No.
Or at least Armen Petrosyan winning 1 round. I would not be surprised. Next up the card, we got Magomed Ankalaev ranked number 2 versus Alexander Rakic ranked number 5. This was probably the lock of the card for me. This is such a big favorite in Magomed Ankalaev. He's almost a minus 400 favorite at this time, and it makes sense. He's coming off a draw against Jan Blachowicz, a no contest against Johnny Walker, and then most recently a KO against Johnny Walker, whereas Rakic is coming off a win against Thiago Santos, a knee injury in the Blachowicz fight, and then a long layoff and a loss to Yuri Prohaska at UFC 300.
You're sounding like every other UFC fan on the planet, counting out my boy Rakic.
I have to. Magomed Ankalaev just has so many wins. He's on a 12-fight unbeaten streak. How do you bet against him?
This isn't the lock of the card. For anyone who wants a full, in-depth breakdown of this fight, we have a video on the channel that we made last week. Go watch that. We really broke down all of the factors leading into this fight. But I do also have Ankalai in this fight. I think that this fight is going to be very competitive and exciting on the feet. Both guys have great class striking, and we're really going to get to see that. I'm just really curious about if Ankalai is going to bring this fight to the ground.
It all comes down to Ankalai being a more complete fighter. He can take this fight wherever he wants to. I guarantee you that he's going to strike in the first 2 rounds, and then if it does seem close, like let's say it's 1-1, he'll just wrestle him to a decision, because Ankalai wants this title shot against Ferrera. The only way the UFC is going to give it to him, well, not the only way, but if he puts on a good performance with a highlight, the UFC is way more likely to give him a title shot rather than if he out-wrestles Rakic to a decision.
It's so interesting because it seems like the UFC and Dana White are so high on every single Kazakhstani fighter except for Ankalai.
Yeah, that's true.
I don't know who he talked to, whose wife he was messing with, but he messed up clearly because he just gets the short end of the stick. I think that Ankalai is really going to put on a performance showing that he deserves Ferrera. This is his final test pre-Alex Ferrera fight in the new year. I would say post-Ramadan, if he gets it done, is when this fight happens.
Yeah, I think this fight goes to decision with Ankalai probably getting a 30-27, but I also wouldn't be surprised if Ankalai clips Rakic overextending on a combination.
Yeah, I think that this fight is going to be, there's going to be rounds where Rakic could potentially have more damage, but I think that the control time and significant strikes, and they're going to use whatever metrics they can to put it in Ankalai's favor.
Yes, exactly. Control time only means something if you're Dagestani.
Exactly.
Or Russian. All right, let's move on. We got Lerone Murphy, ranked number 12, versus Dan Ige, ranked number 14 in the featherweight division. Lerone Murphy, 14-0, with his last win coming in May against Edson Barboza. He went all 5 rounds versus Barboza, put on an absolute striking masterclass. Dan Ige is 18-8 and fighting for the 3rd time this year. His last fight was at UFC 303, losing a decision to Diego Lopez on 2 hours notice.
Lerone Murphy, he's got that undefeated with the only blemish on his record being a draw earlier on in his career. And this dude just has elite striking and really isn't talked about as much as he should be in such a stacked featherweight division. You see people talking about Evloev, you see people talking about Diego Lopez, you see people talking about Sterling, but they aren't talking about Lerone Murphy. And I really hope that he gets his name out there because I think he's just as talented as Sterling and as an Evloev. I don't think he's quite on Diego Lopez's tier, but I think he is as talented or close to as the top up-and-coming featherweights.
Yeah, Lerone Murphy has really crisp striking and really good footwork as well. He can also defend takedowns and keep it on the feet. I can see maybe a finish in the 2nd or 3rd round, like a late finish, but both of these guys put on a really solid pace. So I could definitely see this going to a decision because both guys just absolutely give it their all in the first 2 rounds, and they're almost too tired to put power into their punches.
Ige is yet to be finished inside of the UFC, but has lost his fair share of times to some top featherweights like an Evloev, like a Calvin Kattar, like a Bryce Mitchell, like a Josh Emmett. Basically every good featherweight you can think of, they've probably beaten Dan Ige on their way up to the rankings.
And I think this is going to be a similar case. I have Lerone Murphy winning this one, probably by a decision, but like I said, could be a late round stoppage.
Yeah, I could see Murphy handing Ige his first ever career finish, but I ultimately have Murphy likely getting it done by decision.
Next up the card, we got my boy Robert the Reaper Whitaker, ranked number 3, versus Khamzat Chimaev, ranked number 12 in the middleweight division. This is probably my least confident pick of the main card. Look, I love Rob and I believe in his experience and his well-rounded abilities, but Khamzat is such an unknown right now. Not only with his weight misses and his pace that he can put on for 5 rounds, but also just his skill level. We haven't seen him go up against a full camp high level fighter. Yes, we saw Kamaru Usman, but he was on 2 weeks notice. So I need to see him in his natural weight division now, which is middleweight, against a top 5 fighter.
Yeah, Khamzat Chimaev, nicknamed the Boogeyman, is really truly more like a Joker. You do not know what you're gonna get. Is a wild card. You don't even know if this guy's gonna fight half the time.
How long did it take you to come up with that joke?
I just came up with it right now on the spot.
Sure.
I'm that good.
Sure.
That guy, just like how Chimaev is that good. We have a full breakdown of this fight posted on our channel. If you guys want a full in-depth 10 to 15 minute video talking about this fight, go and check that out. I think that Chimaev is really going to be able to dominate on the ground, and I think Rob is going to have the advantage on the feet. So I think a lot of it is going to come down to where this fight is going to take place.
I am confident if Rob can get out of round 2 that he can win this fight, but it's in those first 2 rounds where I do think he's going to get ragdolled a little bit, especially in the wrestling.
Yeah, if Whitaker can come out of the first 2 rounds 1-1, I'm very confident in Whitaker being able to get this fight done, because I think that he will have better cardio and better stamina than Chimaev, just because of how long he's been doing it. And we've really only seen... Have we ever seen Chimaev in a 5-round fight?
He was scheduled in a 5-round main event fight night against Kevin Holland, which I believe was a short notice fight. Yeah, because he was supposed to fight Nate Diaz, and then he missed weight by 8 pounds, and then Kevin Holland stepped in because Kevin Holland's a BMF. Kevin Holland gets finished in like 2 minutes, submitted instantly, so we never saw that fight get to go past 1 round.
Where we've seen Rob go the full 5 rounds. We saw him lose to Adesanya
So many times.
Yeah, he's gone to the 5 rounds multiple times, and I do think that those 4th and 5th rounds are really going to favor Whitaker, and I think he wins those 4th and 5th rounds more than likely, but it's going to be in those first 2 rounds. If he can get one of those rounds, I think that's what's going to put Whitaker over Chimaev.
The way that Rob fights, he really blitzes in and out with his striking. He doesn't stand and bang in the pocket like we saw with Gilbert Burns. Gilbert Burns was just trading massive blows with Chimaev, which led for some really close rounds and really difficult rounds to score. So I think that with Rob's striking, yes, he doesn't have as good of a chin as some of the other middleweights, but what he does have is a little bit better defense. So I don't think he's gonna allow himself to get hit quite as much as someone like Gilbert Burns in that Chimaev fight. And again, like we said, if this fight goes to that 3rd, 4th, and 5th round, I think Rob just really focuses on getting in and out, stuffing the takedowns, being really conservative, and not overextending on anything. And I think we could see a Robert Whitaker decision win over Khamzat Chimaev. That's my final prediction.
My final prediction, Khamzat Chimaev decision win. It's main event time, baby. The most anticipated fight in all of 2024. We have the champion, ILIA Topuria, taking on the BMF champion, Max Holloway, in the main event.
This is hype. I have been thinking about this for the last 3 weeks straight. If you look at the flags, you can probably guess who we're gonna predict. Early predictions, I have ILIA Topuria winning.
I have Max Holloway winning.
I honestly believe in the boxing and the damage that ILIA Topuria can put on Max Holloway. Even though MMA math doesn't work most of the time, Max has had 3 chances to beat Volk. He's gone 75 minutes with him, and he hasn't ever been able to do it. ILIA had 2 rounds, 7 minutes, and he was able to KO Volk. I understand that circumstances were different. Volk was coming off a KO loss on pretty short recovery time to ILIA. It wasn't the best career decision move, but Volk is still an animal in the featherweight division, and that is one of the best wins that ILIA could ever have on his resume.
It's crazy for a guy like Max Holloway to be 32 years old and for him to have fought for so long, and to almost say that he could be in his prime right now when he's a former champion. The power we've seen in the last 2 fights from Max Holloway is something we haven't seen throughout his career, and that's why I'm leaning towards Max Holloway. I think that this fight is so 50-50. I don't care what the odds say. I think that Max Holloway being a plus 220 underdog is silly from the sports books. I think that this fight is going to be neck and neck. Sure, you can give ILIA a slight advantage with him being younger and him beating Volk, the guy that Max has lost to 3 times, but I do not think that we can talk about what they've done against Volk when we're talking about this fight. I think that that is a totally different circumstance. I think we really need to talk about the guy with all the power in ILIA Topuria versus Max, the guy with the best boxing, and he's gonna the most significant strikes land in a single fight. He's gonna spend the most career time inside of the UFC octagon by the time he's done. This guy is UFC. He bleeds UFC.
Jeez, man, I'm getting shivers right now. That speech was cold. I also think that the betting lines are absolutely insane for this fight. Topuria is at, right now, a minus 270 favorite. I would not bet on him.
No.
Even though I have him as my prediction, that is a terrible bet.
There's no value there.
No. So leading up to this fight, I was about 50-50, but after watching more and more fights, I am about 60-40 for ILIA now.
Ooh, I'm 60-40 Max then. 61-39 Max.
Okay.
Checkmate.
Checkmate. Dylan, you're not gonna like me, and comments are gonna hate me for saying this. I think Max is being slightly overhyped right now with his KO over Gaethje. It literally propelled his perception way higher than it would have if he got a decision win, which is what it would have been if he didn't point to the ground in the last 10 seconds. And I know you can say it's UFC, anything can happen, and that is just the way it went. And he did get that KO. But if he didn't get the last second KO on Justin Gaethje, it would have been a decision win and people would have been really impressed, but he wouldn't be a superstar like he is right now.
I still think people would have talked to him with this dominant win over Gaethje. It would have been a 49-46 win, I think.
At least.
Was how the scorecards had it.
Yeah.
And that's why we had Gaethje in the 5th round really scrambling at the end and why he accepted that stand and bang to end the fight.
Yeah, Topuria can get it done in the wrestling though. He can, if he gets hurt from Max with volume, he can shoot for a double leg takedown. We've seen him before. He's been hurt. He shoots for a takedown against Jai Herbert. He is smart and he's improving every fight. Max Holloway, I'm sure he has some new kick that he's gonna try out on Topuria, which I'm excited to see. He always has something new in his fights, which is always cool to see.
Lucas, do you have any merit to this whole storyline that ILIA is gonna point to the middle of the octagon to start the fight?
ILIA has said a lot of things in the build up to this fight, but how about we wait till our crazy predictions and you can see.
Ooh, okay. We've talked about the full card. Now time for our good surprise, our bust of the night, and our Hail Mary prediction. Lucas, why don't you start us off with your good surprise of the night?
Good surprise, Miktabik Oralbai KOs Mateus Rebecky within 2 rounds.
Ooh, you're getting bold with a good surprise. Typically, it's just a fighter. My good surprise of the night, I'm going Lerone Murphy to really make a name for himself and put himself up there with the top featherweights.
For the biggest bust of the night, Dylan, who do you have?
There's only one guy it can be, and although I predicted him, I just think that Shara Bullet, even if he gets it done, is just gonna look like crap in this fight. Dude has never looked good in a win. He's gonna look like crap even if he gets the 29-28 decision win, and I really hope that the UFC fans start to acknowledge that this guy stinks. Moving on to Lucas, who is your bust of the night?
I'm gonna go with Alexander Rakic. I think he's actually gonna get KO'd. The more I think about it, Magomedov Ankalaev, he's such a good fighter.
What is your Hail Mary prediction?
Okay, you have to tell me if this counts for a Hail Mary prediction because there is a likelihood that it could happen. Okay, it's not like a 1% chance like some of our other predictions. My Hail Mary prediction is that Ilia Topuria points down in the first 10 seconds of the fight and they stand and bang.
I like that. I'll give that to you for your Hail Mary.
All right.
Because I don't know how crazy mine is.
Okay.
My Hail Mary is Chris Barnett gets that first round KO over Nchekawuku.
That was a good pronunciation. You're cooking.
That means it's gonna happen.
That is a crazy prediction. I think that's crazier than mine.
I got faith in Chris Barnett. I think Nchekawuku's going down. That is going to do it for our UFC 308 predictions. Make sure you guys subscribe because we have a ton more UFC 308 content coming out in the lead up. We're going to have our reactions immediately following the pay-per-view on Saturday. Make sure you guys like, comment, subscribe, and hang along for the ride. And we'll see you guys next time. Peace.
See ya.